When you think of the Man in Black, you probably think of an image like this. Black suit, guitar in hand, singing about Folsom and rich folks drinking coffee. I doubt the first thing to come to mind is the Manhattan Flash.
I'm the Manhattan Flash, and I am the best bank robber in New York.
The Chicken in Black is much more than a song about Johnny Cash switching brains with poultry, which, yes, that's what the song is about. But it can also help answer an important question. How did Johnny Cash's career go from washed up country artist to timeless music legend? To better understand, you probably need some context behind this. In late 1954, Cash's career was set in motion after making a deal with a little recording studio by the name of Sun Records, the label responsible for musicians like Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Elvis Presley. As a young new artist, Johnny Cash started to make waves with his first 45 record, containing Hey Porter and Cry Cry Cry, the latter peaking on Billboard's Hot Country charts at number 14. Not bad for his first couple songs. 2 years and 10 singles later, he'd be the first artist to ever release a full-length LP under Sun Records, with his debut album, Johnny Cash with His Hot and Blue Guitar. But feeling restrained from the small label, he decides to take his talent elsewhere, ending his time at Sun Records only 1 year after his album release in 1958. The peak of Cash's popularity was undoubtedly under the Columbia Records label, which he signed to in July of 1958. Here is where his discography really began to take place, with hit songs such as I Still Miss Someone, Don't Take Your Guns to Town, and Ring of Fire. Averaging 2 studio albums a year and having consistent charting singles, he would soon become one of the industry's most notable names, alongside Bob Dylan, Ray Charles, and his longtime friend Elvis Presley. He was able to keep this popularity throughout the late 50s to mid-60s. But as the years progressed, his relevance began to take a lull, primarily due to his deficiency in music and his increasing relations with substance abuse. Columbia Records began talks of dropping the country star. He hadn't been doing the numbers they were used to, and frankly, it seemed as if he couldn't. If he was going to stay with the label, he needed to make something big, and he needed to make it fast.
I'm Johnny Cash.
At Folsom Prison was a concept unbeknownst to the music industry, a live recording performed in front of inmates at a penitentiary. But for Cash, it was a plan brewing for over a decade. Folsom Prison Blues had been a track on his debut album from 11 years ago at Sun Records. And since then, the idea of performing it in the Northern California prison had remained a pressing ambition of his. Being arrested a few times himself for minor misdemeanors, such as public drunkenness and trespassing, Johnny Cash had always had a soft spot for those dealing with prison life. He saw a little bit of himself in these inmates, as if he were to make one more bad turn, he'd end up where they are, in a broken system. He'd wanted to perform for the prison for years, but his producers were always quick to turn down the notion, saying it was too risky a tactic.
I mentioned it to 3 or 4 people at Columbia, and they just kind of fluffed the idea off, and maybe I would lose interest in it for a while, but I never forgot the idea. I kept going back to prisons, playing shows for the men, and every time I played one, I decided more and more that I had to go to a prison to make a record.
Well, now, with nothing else to lose, and with his new producer Bob Johnston's approval, the risk seemed like the only route to take. At Folsom Prison became an immediate success. There was energy, heart, and authenticity all encompassed in the 45-minute LP, and not only rejuvenating Cash's motivations, but also saving his relationship with Columbia. Well, for now. At Folsom Prison was able to keep him in the limelight for a couple more years, but once the hits inevitably became more and more infrequent, Columbia Records was, again, pushing to renegotiate their partnership. By 1984, Cash had been wrung dry, so being dissatisfied with his recent lack of success, Columbia was no longer interested in moving forward with his career. All the while, Cash was dissatisfied with Columbia, for not promoting his material, feeling as if he'd been pushed to the side for the sake of other up-and-coming artists, such as Michael Jackson, Metallica, and Billy Joel, to name a few. To Columbia, Johnny Cash was just another tool that had met its end, a dried-up asset ready to be replaced. Needless to say, Cash did not take this lightly. The years of pursuing tension had peaked, and he decided to make his feelings known.
But something strange happened when I walked in the bank one day.
The Chicken in Black, in Cash's own words, is a song made, quote, intentionally atrocious. June Carter, Cash's wife, even called it the lowest point of his 1980s career. Just the theme of it goes against everything his career was built upon. Sure, he'd had some comical songs in years past, like A Boy Named Sue or One Piece at a Time, but this was something else. The premise of the song, in simplest terms, is Johnny Cash being in need of a brain transplant. And luckily, the brain doctor had just received a deceased bank robber whose brain was in perfect condition. So, after Johnny got his new brain, things didn't go to plan, as you can assume. Because now, he was sharing his personality with the Manhattan Flash.
I'm the best bank robber in New York.
In an attempt to fix the problem, he tries to get his old brain back, but to his surprise, the doctor already gave it away to, of course, a chicken. As the song says, I put your brain in a chicken last Monday, he's singing your songs and making lots of money, and I got him signed to a 10-year recording contract. There's two ways to take this song. Either at surface value, that Johnny Cash made a comically terrible song, maybe to stay relevant or something. But the more popular theory is this was a way to preemptively terminate his contract. Make a song so bad that they're forced to drop him. Again, that is just a rumor to the intentions behind the song, but there's no denying that the lyrics are clearly directed towards his uppers. Sure, the overlying theme is ridiculous, what with all the bank robber and brain switching shenanigans, but the undertone of the song is a subtle jab at his label, claiming that if they could, Columbia would leave him in the dirt for a guitar-playing rooster just to save a pretty penny.
You ought to catch that Johnny Chicken show. Chicken in Black.
It's not uncommon for artists to criticize their labels for strict management and money-mongering tactics. They're often the ones to be receiving the short end of the stick, even though their art is what's bringing in the money.
I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer.
In Johnny Cash's situation, it was a difference of two wants and two opinions. Cash's desire to receive more promotion for his material, as that was his belief in why his music was failing, and Columbia's desire for Cash to simply adapt to the times, as that was their belief to why Johnny was no longer profitable. In the end, it concluded in a parting of ways.
Somebody stole all the magic and the pink out of it all, like in the 70s, some of the 80s, when the magic of the music was gone. And I was just doing it because I do it. I was just doing it because that's what I do. And I hate that. I hate to think back on those years when I did it just because that's what I do.
As the story goes, on July 18th, 1986, Johnny Cash started his day like any other, with a cup of coffee and the newspaper, only to find out from the morning's headline he'd been dropped from Columbia. Now free from any contract, Cash was left with a question. Does he enter the game again, or does he step away from the industry for good? Without a corporation breathing down his neck, he had the freedom to live as he pleased. He recalls this time in his 1997 autobiography, stating, "I'd given up. I had already started thinking that I didn't want to deal with record companies anymore. Saying goodbye to the game and just working the road, playing with friends and family for people who really wanted to hear us, seemed very much like the thing to do. I began looking forward to it. But as we know, that's not the plan that was in store for him."
So I decided I'd just do my thing. I'll do my tours and writing, and that's all I need. So that's what I was trying to do. But I got hungry to be back in the studio, to be creative and put something down, you know, for the fans to hear. And about that time that I got to feeling that way, Lou Robin, my manager, came to me and talked to me about a man called Rick Rubin that he had been talking to that wanted me to sign with his record company. It was American Recordings.
It started more from a process perspective of been having success doing the things that I'm doing with these young artists. And I thought, okay, who's the best grown-up artist I can think of who maybe isn't doing their best work or hasn't been doing their best work for a while? And the first person I thought of was Johnny Cash.
I said, I like the name, maybe it'd be okay. So I said, I'd like to meet the guy. I think I was more comfortable with him than I would have been with a producer with a suit on. But I said, what are you going to do with me that nobody else has been able to do to sell records with me? And he said, well, I don't know that we will sell records. He said, I would like you to go with me and sit in my living room with a guitar and 2 microphones and just sing to your heart's content everything you ever wanted to record. I said, that sounds good to me.
Cash's final years almost poetically reflect his humble beginnings as a boy in Arkansas. Nothing but a guitar in hand and a heart full of hymns and psalms. Rick Rubin was able to bring back the joy he felt in music before the blinding world of record companies and success. The Chicken in Black, the song said to be intentionally atrocious by its own creator, should be remembered as the turning point to Johnny Cash's career. Without hitting rock bottom, and without a falling out with Columbia, Cash never would have made it to American Recordings. We never would have received songs like Hurt, Ain't No Grave, Won't Back Down, or The Man Comes Around. But most importantly, Johnny Cash never would have been able to live out his final years in fulfillment.
How are we looking? And looking back at all that you've done, do you have any regrets about what you've done, or do you think it's, I mean, there's so much you've accomplished?
I used to, but I don't. I forgave myself.
No. That's good.
When God forgave me, I figured I better do it too. So everything's all right now.